Three, two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but tonight we are going on about a film that was brought to our attention by my fiance Tammy. So why don't you tell us what film you have subjected us to this week, and what is the theme for this month? Again, wasn't it still Strange May?
Yep, Strange May. Well, it's still May.
Strangely enough.
Yes.
So, Tammy.
The film I picked was Bednobs and Broomsticks.
Okay, it is a 1971 film, just so you know.
Don't you know?
And it is directed by Robert Stevenson and Ward Kimball, with writers Ralph White, Ted Berman, and Bill Walsh.
Oh.
And it stars Angela Lansbury, David Tomlinson, Roddy McDowall, among many others. Let's see what IMDb says about the film here. An apprentice witch, three kids, and a cynical magician, con man, search for the missing component to a magic spell to be used in the defense of Britain in World War II. So that is what IMDb says about the film. Tammy, why don't you bring us into first impressions?
You want to do mine first, or?
How about whichever you want to do first. Some people say theirs first. Some people wait until in the end once everyone else has gone through theirs.
I'll just do mine. I actually don't remember the first time I saw this, but I do remember. I do know the first time I saw it, I wasn't so aware of different actors and actresses as I am now. So, I wasn't as impressed with who was in this movie as I am now, because it is a good, cast, and I definitely do like a lot of the actors that are in this movie. But anyways, I thought it was neat. It was a lot of fun. It's one of the few for its at its early time, it was one of the few movies that came out that actually had animation and actors in it. That was something that it wasn't done that much yet at that time, to actually have animation along with people. So that was something that was really neat about it. And as I got older and watched it, I appreciated a lot of other things in it even more, because of who was in it, But I've always thought it was a lot of fun, and I like that it's a little bit of everything. You've got your cartoon in it, you've got your storyline, you've got somewhat of a musical because there's just singing the songs in it. So it's just, and you got kids in it. It's just and you have a cat. Yeah.
Gotta have the cat.
Cosmic Creepers.
Yes. Yeah.
They made that cat look rough.
Yeah, he
It
looks a little rough around the edges. Yes, just a little rough there. But it's an all-around fun movie because you have a lot of different elements in it, and when you're younger and watch it, it's a lot of fun, and when you're older and you watch it, you appreciate actually all the different elements that are in it too. So, moving on, let's do Jake.
Well,
Jake, what were your,
what's that?
oh, I was going to say, what were your first impressions?
Yeah. This is definitely a movie that I knew by name for some time, but I never actually got around to watching it. I think probably growing up, even, I was aware of its existence, but there, on what Tammy said, there actually were a number of Disney films where they tried to marry live action and animation, and some more successfully than others. I guess Mary Poppins is probably the best known of the ones most people have seen. Song of the South is probably the most infamous of the bunch. They've done a few of them, and this was actually one of their later. I think Pete's Dragon came after this. But there were a couple of other. But this is kind of almost in the middle of the bunch. And I've got to say, I never really saw much appeal in them growing up. I like the full animated ones and some of the fully live action ones I got into, but and I think that's partly my folks too. When I mentioned that we were watching this, Mom was like, ugh. She never really got into it, I guess. I was shocked, frankly, at how little full animation there is in the movie. There's basically one major sequence that's animated, and I had thought this was one that had animation kind of throughout, so I was a little bit surprised. There is some special effects, quote unquote, that are animated. They are kind of throughout much of the film, but the actual animated sequence is pretty much a scene a little over halfway through, if I remember correctly. Or a series of scenes, I should say. Very much.
There isn't a whole lot of animation. Yeah, like you said, it's.
Yeah. Very much that late 60s, early 70s, like the same animators that worked on The Jungle Book and Robin Hood and whatever. You can definitely see that there's a lot of, and I made the joke, they get to the island and they meet this bear on the shore, and I'm like, dear God, Baloo and Gilligan had a love child. And it looks like it. It really does. And partly it's because the animators clearly are the same animators that did Baloo in the first place. Of course, once the character starts speaking, you're like, well, this can't be right. This guy's an asshole. But but it's that particular era of Disney animation, that they had a very distinct animation style during that era. And yes, you do have Mr. Banks and Miss Potts together in this film, along with Roddy McDowall and some other folks. So some familiar faces, no doubt about it. Of course, the kids. Apparently, the girl, Cindy O'Callaghan, has a long career, but Charlie, Ian Whale, this is his only acting credit. I didn't look up. Roy Snart plays Paul. I didn't realize Snart was an actual name. I know Leonard Snart, but I didn't know there were real people with that name. But anyway, my first impression, well, it was colored by the fact that this is Strange May. So I'm going to be honest, I was expecting something a whole lot weirder. Even though this was a Disney film and I knew that going in, I was kind of like, okay, there's got to be a reason this is in Strange May. And I made a joke afterwards. It is strange by Disney standards. I'll give it that. But
I picked it for Strange May because it's a fun strange.
It is. It is. It's a Disney Strange. It's a family-friendly Strange. Like, it gets a little darker than your average Disney film, and it goes in some weird and unexpected places, and I will give it that. It's interesting seeing Angela Lansbury play a antisocial witch. I mean, that's not the kind of role I associate her with. Training, I should say.
You more think of her as a mystery writer going around solving crimes.
Either that or as the kindly old matron, like the character she voiced in Beauty and the Beast.
Well, she did play.
What's up?
She did play an on screen on what it was, a live Broadway adaptation of Sweeney Todd and the Demons of Street.
Oh, I didn't know that, but that makes sense. Now, I was going to say, in fairness, this did come out after The Manchurian Candidate, where she plays an out-and-out villain. So, I've seen her go dark. This is not really dark. This is more mischievous. But again, seeing her in a Disney film where she's playing a witch, it's an unusual combination, and I'll give it that.
Like Lifetime's Good Witch,
Yeah.
Except early on.
But and I did like the cat. The cat was fun. And all the incredibly interesting facial hair. The movie had its strange quirks that were fairly amusing. I absolutely loved that the medics at the soccer game were vultures. I thought that was hilarious and really dark for a Disney movie.
Indeed.
So it had its moments, and I definitely appreciated it. I'm glad I finally got to see it. Would I say it was one of the strangest films I've seen? Hardly, but would I say it was an interesting entry for the month? Oh yeah, definitely. So, like I said, I'm glad I got to see it.
Okay, was that all then?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, how about you, Carl? Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Long time no see.
Carl?
You are muted, sir.
Well, I guess we'll come back to Carl.
Hi.
There he is.
There we go.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. I didn't rewatch it, but I figured I'd pop anyways. I watched it when I was a little wee lad in the movie theaters. I'm sorry, in the drive-in. Yeah, we don't have drive-ins here anymore. Yeah, I absolutely love this movie. I loved when they mixed animation and action together. I just made it feel like it was kind of real. This was, Song of South not something I'd watched as a kid, so to me it was always this and Mary Poppins as far as live action and animated.
Well, Mary Poppins was done in 1964, and this was done in 1971. So
Right. Well, that doesn't mean much. If I remember correctly, I think Pete's Dragon was 79, and I think that was actually the first one I saw.
I'm not sure the relevance on that, but okay. But anyways, like I was saying, those are the two movies that I thought of when I thought of action and cartoons. Not Song of the South, as you had mentioned, but yeah, I absolutely loved it. I loved it as a kid. I actually was looking forward to seeing it. But I slipped my mind and I was busy doing stuff and completely forgot you guys were doing this until I got the message and I was like, oh yeah, well let me hop in anyways. I can't say too much on the plot because it's been a long time since I watched it, but just wanted to hop in and see how much I loved watching this as a kid, and I would actually like to watch it again. So maybe I'll just watch it again for the heck of it afterwards. Pretty much done with that. Like I said, I won't have a lot to say, but I want to hop in anyways to give my opinion.
Okay, it's nice to have you hop in with us.
Thanks.
I mean, we're used to seeing you Sunday, but it's nice to have you come join us again on Monday.
Yeah, I wanted to join I wanted to watch this and join, but like I said, I just it slipped my mind. And
Well,
Okay.
you can put in stuff wherever you happen to remember or whatever. We'll get along here.
yeah, I just remember absolutely loving it as a kid in the drive-in, and you know, whenever I think of Angela Lansbury, I think of this movie. You know, and then maybe Colchester and Murder She Wrote, I guess. But it was definitely this movie. It was hands down the, you know, when I think of her, I think of this movie.
Okay. Okay, let's move along to Brandon.
So yeah, this is not my first time watching this. I actually first saw this on TV. I saw the TV edit. I want to say this was back when they were still doing those Walt Disney showcases on ABC, and because I remember watching this before we got the satellite dish, so I only really had the 3 channels, and I remember that they used to do like a Wonderful World of Walt Disney or something like that, and then they would show one of these films during that when I was growing up. And so I got to see the TV edit, which is substantially shorter than this one. But according to what they had said, I watched some of the supplementals on it, that when it got to theaters, they had to cut it because they debuted it at Radio City Music Hall. And apparently the films that were debuting there could only be of a certain length. So they had to really drastically cut this film. And the one I watched this time was restored for the most part, and now it's almost 2 hours. So it's kind of funny how it works, at least in that way. I really did enjoy the mixture of animation. I actually never saw Mary Poppins until later. Like I saw it within the last 20 years, but I was a full adult when I saw it. Whereas here I did see it as a kid, so I'm sure I would have enjoyed Mary Poppins a little bit better. I know this one was in production around the same time as Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins was near the end of production when this one started. As a matter of fact, it started because, well, there was a delay in Mary Poppins thanks to the author trying to having to be convinced of permissions, which most people know that story.
Yep.
And because of that, this one actually did get greenlit, and they had started working on production during that, and that was pretty cool. And there's actually at least one song that they dropped from Mary Poppins that made it into this. There might have been others, but I can't remember. The whole scene under the sea that they did was supposed to be a Mary Poppins scene, including the song, but they dropped it from Mary Poppins again because of author complaints. So they threw it in here instead. So Beautiful Briny Sea, that was the one. So that's kind of a cool thought too. So really watching this and Mary Poppins, actually they kind of are companions in a way. They have shared blood. They're family in a way.
In more ways than one, you know. I mean, it is. I always thought of David Tomlinson as a comedic vocal actor, you know, and especially with his the way he goes mad in Mary Poppins. But that
was everything I had. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize about Roddy McDowall until after I looked it up on IMDb. I was like, oh, he's playing the priest character. But otherwise, you know, enjoyable film. I did enjoy watching it again. It was kind of a good thing to just kind of try and sit back. I wish I could have just sat back on the couch and watched this and relaxed to it. But no such luck on that one. But still, it was enjoyable to rewatch, especially some of the World War II stuff. I did like that. Was managing to take a very serious and depressing topic of that times and do that. I mean, shoot, there were several, like the old brigade that they had was likely of fighting age in World War II. So actually more than fighting age probably then. They were probably in their late 20s, early 30s, probably in World War II. But still, it's kind of cool to see it all.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, considering when this film started, it was very likely they were well above fighting age in World War II, but not old age.
Right.
It's funny you had mentioned Roddy McDowell because, like I said earlier, I did when I first watched it. I wasn't so much into actors and actresses and stuff, so it's like I didn't appreciate everybody that was in it till I got older, you know. And I happen to like Roddy McDowell, you know. So it was kind of neat seeing him in there, you know.
And instead, he ends up being kind of like an Ichabod Crane-like character, getting scared.
Well, speaking
Yeah,
of
definitely not a monkey.
speaking of the priest, though, I will admit that was one of the odder touches in the film, and I was almost disappointed at this, but in a sense, it adds to the oddity because in a sense it's kind of a Lynchian touch. The plot thread that you keep coming back to that in the end doesn't go anywhere. That seems to happen a lot in David Lynch's films, and of course he is known for being peculiar. I felt like The Preacher was like that. He was a plot thread that never really went anywhere, but he was kind of fun while he was there.
Yeah. I think his whole purpose about it in it kind of like was because she's supposed to be a witch, you know. Or
Right.
she is a witch, you know. So that's where I think the preacher thing all came in, you know, because a witch is like taboo, you know.
Did anyone else think he was doing a really good Jim Carrey impression?
Bollocks. Bollocks when it comes to witches. But
Well, he definitely wasn't playing a monkey this time.
take any witch over a priest any day.
Or chimpanzee. Right. So, what did you say, Carl?
Huh?
I said I'd take any witch over a priest any day.
Ah. Okay, well then Dave, we're on to you.
Alrighty. Well, this is definitely not a first time watch. Bedknobs and Broomsticks was definitely on my childhood film rotation. When I was a kid, I believe my mom had taped it on a VHS tape with a bunch of other Disney movies at the time. I think it was on one with, if I'm not mistaken, my mom had taped 3 movies. It was Bedknobs and Broomsticks, Darby O'Gell and the Little People, and the Gnome-mobile. So those 3 were always on constant rotation, at least in my childhood. So
It was a good movie.
so, but yeah, I've always kind of liked Angela Lansbury as an actress. I've caught her in many various roles. In fact, Kroll, you're the one who introduced me to the court jester, which had her in it. So
yeah, she played a different part in that one. She wasn't really very likable in that movie.
Nope.
She played a spoiled princess.
Wasn't she also one of the versions of the picture of Dorian Gray?
She might have been, but I can't be entirely certain. But
I believe it was because I have more than one version of that movie.
But I've liked David Tomlinson in Mary Poppins and as the staunch bank accountant at London's bank, who ends up learning how to be a father with his children, at least there. And of course, he's kind of a father figure in here, in a sense. even though he comes off as a car salesman, sort of pandering his wares. But
She melts.
I enjoy. I enjoy the magic aspect of this film, especially when Angela Miss Price's character is she's learning how to at night fly on a broomstick. I mean, of course, we don't know that she's secretly going to get the Nimbus 3000. So, but in any case, that's another Hogwarts story for another channel. But that being said, I enjoyed the film, and I still enjoy it. I enjoy the ghostly presence of an army. So that being said, I think we can get into the plot somewhat. Right, Tammy?
Yes.
Unless you need some help with this area.
So, yes. This is during, I believe, World War II. Angela Lansbury's character is basically, in a way, a recluse. She likes her privacy. She's, a little eccentric, people think, and everything. She comes to town, and they're trying to find places for misplaced children during the war right now, and 3 children get sent home with her, and while she feels obligated to help out, this is not something that she wanted, This when she had come into town, she was picking up things that she was getting mail ordered to her, and she because she secretly is studying
Training
to be
herself
a witch.
to be a witch, yes.
So, so that we see this all in the beginning, and so she does take the children back, and it makes things quite interesting for her at the beginning. Needless to say, and the children.
So what do y'all think about the children as characters?
They're actually more likable than I thought they would be, because usually, like, the Mary Poppins children are actually less likable because of their behavior than these. These, it's more like, well, they're war orphans, so they got reason to be as screwed up as they are. And they're really not all that screwed up, other than the older brother. The others are pretty good. And he even comes around pretty quickly. So I was fine with them.
How about you, Jake?
I thought that the kids, particularly, I guess Charlie was the spokesperson for the group, had a fascinating accent. But he was a con man in the making. I guess if the professor ends up being his father figure, they may end up getting into some shenanigans down the road. But but overall, I thought they were a fun group of kids. Yeah.
Okay. What did y'all think about Miss Price's character throughout the film? Brandon, what did you think about Miss Price's character?
I mean, it's Lansbury, if I remember correctly. She's
Yep.
Definitely. I don't know. She plays what she is. I keep forgetting how old she is because she was nearly in her 50s for this. But she was, I like that she was an apprentice witch, and I like the concept of the character. I like the concept of the character of a patriotic witch. Just like I like the little picture on the background of her leading the charge on her broomstick with the saber in hand and the Union Jack on the back of her broom. I love that. That is a cool concept.
Yeah, the kids are on their bed like little Nemo, in a sense. But Jake, what did you think about Miss Price's character overall?
I thought that again, I usually enjoy Angela Lansbury as an actress, so I think she does a fine job. I think she could have done more with the character. The character, they definitely played it a lot safer, a lot more conventional than they could have. But overall, yeah, she makes a pretty decent central character for the film.
Okay.
I did just look it up, and Angela Lansbury was in a 1945 version of the picture of Dorian Gray. That's what I thought. So I just happened to like those movies, and I have more than one, so I knew she was in one.
Okay.
So,
Kroll, did you have any thoughts or opinions about the kids or Miss Price or Angela Lansbury's character that you wanted to throw out before we moved on with plot? Okay. I guess we'll move on with plot then.
well, I did want to say one more. I do enjoy Angela Lansbury, and just about anything I've ever watched of hers, I thought that she did good on. It's just she's got a way to make herself like kind of fit into every role, which I've been surprised in some. Like when we watched that Sweeney Todd thing.
Yeah.
That was, I was like, wow, that's her, and
Yeah.
and the character in the portrait of Dorian Gray that I'm talking about, that seems a little, her character in there even seems a little off, but yeah, I really enjoy her. So
Okay. So as Tammy mentioned, it is a war-torn country in the background where the kids have been brought to Miss Price's home, and I believe they have a meal with her, even though it's a little reluctant. And then you meet Cosmic Creepers, the cat, which is a character of its own, I think.
oh yeah, I think Diego might like him.
In a sense, he's like the pre-cat version of Sabrina the Teenage Witch's cat, in a sense, because I'm not. I think the only other film that I've seen a that was in the black and white era where there was a black cat involved was I Married a Witch. Which, black cats have been associated with witches since the dawn of time. I don't know why. But
yeah, there was one in Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, there was one in Hocus Pocus too. That being said, Kids go to bed. And I guess they wake up during the night and witness her flying her or trying to attempt to fly her broomstick. Did you want to bring us forward from here, Tammy?
Yeah, the children decide that they're not going to stay, and they're going to go. They're going to run away back to London. And as they're getting ready to leave, yes, they see her flying the broomsticks and crashing. But they think that they can use this to their advantage because, and they decide to stay because she's not going to want anybody to know that she's a witch, you know. So this all comes to light, and she kind of sets things down, sets things straight with them, and makes them realize, she's not a mean, bad witch or things like that. And that the whole reason she got into it was because she wanted to be able to do something for the war, to help stop the war. Was her reasoning behind getting into this. So,
well, and she makes up her mind to hunt down a certain Professor Brown, who evidently she's been getting a ton of mail from. In fact, the lady in town has always been asking her, has been nosy. She always thought that there was something going on between the two of them, that she got so much stuff from him.
In fact, I think the cat was even sent to her from him.
Yes. She said he came with the name Cosmic Reaper, so that's what she called him.
Come to think of it, wasn't he basically just sending her like pages from like a book that he found in that house he was spying in?
I think so. And that was that home with the bomb that was in the middle of the courtyard or whatever.
Hey, an unexploded bomb keeps the people away.
So, yeah. So she decides to take the kids with her on a journey, and she suggests to do it by turning the bed that used to be her grandfather's into a traveling bed with a spell from the Professor Brown that she used, and she made sure that the littlest child held on to the bedpost knob and dinged it 3 times and said where they needed to go, and they showed up where Professor Brown was.
See, there was one thing interesting about this spell, because they established a little early that she's not all that great an apprentice witch, and that most of her spells just fizzle out after a short time, like the rabbit spell, which you find out that the professor is even better, is able to cast it normally and stays a rabbit much longer later in the movie. But her spells don't seem to work for long periods. Yet this particular spell lasts for the whole movie, which is pretty impressive.
Yes, and I think because she is starting to believe in herself more, with the kids believing in her, is I think why her magic starts to grow, and even Professor Brown.
I do like how she turns the boy into a rabbit to defeat his blackmail.
Yeah, I do. That was pretty cool. Taught the boy a lesson right off the bat. But anyways, Tammy, did you want to bring us into the next scene here with the meeting of Professor Brown?
Well, they utilize the bed as a transport to go to find Mr. Brown, and when they arrive, um, she's looking for Mr. Brown, and the kids end up finding him doing a magic show on the street. And
I believe he sings about doing something with a flare.
yeah, as he's doing his magic show.
And it's all from stuff that pops out from his suitcase.
Yeah,
it's kind of funny because even the table that he had he had the suitcase sitting on came from the suitcase. So, and a lot of people used to have those types of things that they were salesmen, you know, especially street ones. I don't know if you guys have ever seen street people who have that kind of those kind of supplies on hand. But so Tammy, tell us about the meeting of the professor.
I tried to remember her and him meaning. I'm remembering the kids in him. So could you help me out? I'm trying to remember her and him
Sure.
meeting. I remember the kids.
Yeah. Sure. Dustin, what did you think about the meeting of the professor? Where about there? The Professor Browning, so to say. Welcome to the show, by the way.
Yeah, I'm happy to be back. We were kind of delayed. So I thought this was a 90-minute movie. This was like a 3-hour movie. So, surprise.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to be really frank about it. I do not remember who we're referring to as the professor because it took quite a it was quite a long stretch of time. So where in the story are we?
We are where the kids and Mrs. Price, Angela Lansbury's character, has taken the bed, turned it into a traveling thing, and they've suddenly shown up where Professor Brown is.
Her professor / teacher of magic she's doing like a correspondence witchcraft class. I remember now. It's kind of funny. I think they called him the professor once or twice, and then never again. So that's where I was getting confused. That's my bad. But it took me a minute to realize what was going on in that scene. It's like, oh, he's not some. I think she thinks that she's been taking lessons from like a guy in a wizard costume, like in a castle somewhere. He's just this guy on the street. So
she was actually taking lessons from a supposed college of magic. And evidently the magic school had closed down, and the whole reason why it did is because of that book that was like torn in half or whatnot. That's where he was getting his spells from.
Well, the way he told the story, it sounded like he was the school, and when the book got ripped up, he was kind of like, well, okay.
Yeah.
Like it sounded like he was by himself. I don't think there was actually like a school.
Yeah.
like it seemed like she thought that there was a school, and he said
To him, it was just another con.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So, I mean, that was a fun scene where it's, this guy doesn't have any power at all. He was, so, I don't know, it was, I guess it kind of went like how I'd expect it to after that point. They're trying to get him to explain. It's like, well, I need the last lesson. And he's like, well, I don't know. I mean, I copied those from some old book. What do you mean that they work? So it was just kind of a fun, quirky character introduction for him. So I swear to God, I cannot remember the dude's actual name. He looks exactly like how John Cleese looks in my head, and I kept wrong the entire time. I am so sorry.
I believe it's David Tomlinson who you're referring to. He played Mr. Banks from Mary Poppins.
And that was quote unquote the professor, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so Mr. Banks, there.
Tammy, did you need any help going forward after that? Because from there, I believe after turning him into a rabbit, right? Just to prove that magic could happen. And he's like, you got that from one of my spells?
Yeah, that's what Billy does do good at, is turning people into a rabbit.
Yeah.
Yeah, except
That's
she
not
starts
what she's
forgetting
trying
that
to
one.
do.
Admittedly, she comes close to finding the book that she needs with the spell she's looking at, but she only finds half of it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the little tiny kid has found the entire book, and no one seems to be listening to him.
Well, that's because it's a kid's book, by all estimation. And meanwhile, our professor decides that we're going to go to the home of the longest song in the movie, which, as Dustin had pointed out, yes, this movie was nowhere near this long, but I think I'd said it before, they had to cut it because they debuted it in Radio City Music Hall. And then they finally restored the movie to its original length prior to its debut when they did this, when they put it all together. This piece here, the song about the, what's the name of the road?
Piccadilly Road, Portobello Road.
Portobello.
That song, apparently, they cut a lot out of that song originally. And you can tell because that sequence goes on for a long time, that dance sequence does.
Yeah, it's a very cool sequence. I mean, it's because of all the dancing and the song, and there's so many characters and so many things going on.
Well, yeah, you had Irish, you had Irish people, you had American people, you had the flamingo dancers with the African Nationalist Army. It
was very
And
diverse in London, which I would not have accepted in the 40s.
And at the same time, you've got the kids investigating all the different little carts and the people and everything.
What do you think you are, the Queen of
Sheba? For the book, and there's a whole lot going on there. So
it was actually funny because there's 4 minutes more of that sequence that's lost forever. So it is kind of funny how that went. There's also a song of Angela Lansbury's that was also lost. The song itself was not lost, but the film of what she was doing during the song, that was lost because the song shows up on the soundtrack, but the song itself, they lost the film, so they only have the sound from it.
Oh,
interesting. Yeah, they didn't seem to take care of films as well as they should have back in the 70s, I think. Or even back in the wartime, because they used films for nitrate, if I remember correctly, a lot during wartime. So we lost a lot of films due to that. But Um, in any case, so
Isn't it funny how stupid people were in the past?
well, he takes her to this home that he's been kind of. Professor Brown takes her to this home that he has been kind of squatting at from time to time. And the reason why he's able to squat at it is because there is a bomb in the middle of the courtyard, which has not gone off at all, I don't think. But they
kind of backtrack a little bit there, dear.
Oh, am I?
Yes.
Well,
they were at the home first, and then they went to.
Yep, they went to pick a Portobello, and then
while they were at Portobello, a gentleman overheard them talking about the book, and once Portobello moved, once everybody cleared out, the guy basically took them to go meet.
And I think it's kind of funny that Professor Brown ended up forcing the dude to push the bed all the way to the booker's place.
Well, yeah.
He talked him into that a little too easy, I think. I don't know, but the guy just seemed kind of like a hired goon. So. I can believe it, but at the same time, it's kind of like, wow.
Yeah, but anyways, the kids end up pushing the bed down the stairs, and the booger's like, well, what is this? I'm an old man. What's happening here, boss? They said this was a birthday present, and Miss Price was like, nope, that's my grandfather's bed. So, what do y'all think about the Booker as a character and his goon?
I mean, he was a brief character, so somebody. I think that if there was anything that could have been some extension, he would have made a good villain for this if he was in more than just one scene. But he wasn't, so I guess that doesn't matter as much. But he would have been a cool villain to have, trying to track her down and the book so that they can get a hold of that medallion, that star medallion, with the final incantation on it, which they figure out after combining the book and reading that it was on this, that it was done by this wizard who had formed this animal island. And of course, the kid was able to identify that it was
the Star of Astaroth, I believe it was. And Astaroth was that wizard that you were speaking about.
And of course, nobody wants to listen to the kid except for the other two kids realize what's going on and want to shut them up.
Well, and in this Booker meeting is when the kid first speaks up about the fact that, hey, wait a minute, there is an Isle of Naboomba. It's right here in this book. See?
Right, that's what I said. The other kids want to shut them up because they realize what's going on.
So they take an escape by using the traveling spell once again, taking them to the Isle of Naboomba, except it takes them under the sea. Under the sea, down where it's wetter. No, oh wait, wrong movie.
And somehow nobody gets wet or has trouble breathing.
Nope.
Right?
Well, of course not.
And yet, I give them credit for making sure the bubbles were actually in front of their characters whenever they went down. I mean, I can understand the green screen behind them. But how they introduced the bubbles and got the fish to go into his mouth and come out of it at certain points, that had to be tricky. What do y'all think about this this first animated sequence under the sea, where
Well,
it involves the briny sea?
it's fun because knowing that this was originally planned for Mary Poppins, that's actually a cool thing, a cool side, that this wasn't originally supposed to be included in it, but they had cut it from Mary Poppins and song and setting and decided to have it in this. So adapting it to this is kind of cool. It's a little bit of lore and a cool connection to two movies with some similar ideas. It's also a cool song also. I do like the song.
It is, and this is where kind of the romance of between Miss Price and Professor Brown seemed to start to come into. Well, it started to in the Portobello Road song, because he kind of danced with her and was trying to show her a little bit of why Portobello Road was so exciting, because it had all these different things. I know I'm somewhat talking about that previous scene, but it kind of is an advancement in the relationship between the two, and the unlikely pair, teacher to student, the Florence Nightingale, almost Florence Nightingale concept. And I also saw that there was a barbershop quartet of fish that was on the side along with the band. I kind of appreciated that. When they came up out of the clam, that was kind of cool. What did y'all think? Okay, so, and then everybody scattered because a hook came down and it hooked the bed and dragged it up to the top, and that's when we met your Gilligan character, Jake. Right?
That's right. He had no idea he hooked a bed.
Expect to hook a bed. I mean, maybe a boot if you're being classic cartoon with it, but a whole bed is kind of a lot.
Oh.
A whole bed with 5 people on it. That's a pretty good haul, right?
No, because he right away tries to drag Mr. Brown to this sign that says "No peopling."
I do like the sign. Though in truth, the king doesn't really act as if he's really anti-people. Matter of fact, he just looks as quickly as he can to use the dude for what his purposes are, like immediately.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait, somebody that will referee my madhouse game of soccer.
Yep, and then of course we have the whole soccer, and they realize that the Star of Astaroth is actually around the king's neck. So,
yeah, this had some moments that were kind of stealthily dark. They're just kind of like what they explain. Oh yeah, eventually the animals rebelled and killed Astaroth, and it's like, and that's that's the last time his star was seen. And the king is just like, oh yeah, it's a family heirloom, and he's just wearing it, and it's like, ooh.
It's interesting that they stuck the island of Dr. Moreau in there. Which actually, I believe was a thing prior to this, because there was the original movie was what, 1920s, 1930? I can't remember.
Island of Lost Souls, if I remember.
Island of Lost Souls, yeah.
Bela Lugosi.
So yeah, this is very Dr. Moreau, and which is much darker than you would expect from Disney. But Disney has done some weird stuff over the times. I mean, shoot, they did that Midnight Madness movie back in the day, and that was not dark, but that was a raunchy sex comedy. So, Disney Studios done some well, made some interesting steps, I shall say,
Oh,
over the years.
yeah, definitely. They have had their hand dipped in darkness before. But here they have a two teams of animals doing a soccer tournament. And you got a blue team, and I think you've got was it a red team? I think it was.
Yellow team.
What?
Yellow? Maybe? I don't know. I'm just looking.
It was yellow and blue team. It's on the poster.
Yellow.
That's why I was looking at the poster, just in case. Sometimes they recolor them, so I wasn't 100%. But
Right.
yeah.
And if I'm remembering correctly, the king had a rhinoceros, and what was it? A snake?
His
Yeah,
team was scary as heck.
He had a rhinoceros, an alligator, a hyena, a gorilla, and I think there was one more, wasn't there?
Yeah, the gorilla was the goalie.
There's a warthog, wasn't there?
Yeah, the warthog.
Yeah.
Yeah, warthog. Yeah, and then of course there on the other side of the team there was an ostrich,
Mhm.
and a cheetah, and an elephant, and I think there were two more on that team as well.
Kangaroo and a hippo.
A kangaroo and a giraffe.
No, it was a hippo.
Oh, that's right, hippo.
Hippo.
Definitely had some running over. And Jake, you have to mention your medics.
Yeah, there were two medics with the nice little red cross, and they were vultures.
I mean, you talk about gallows humor. And
I love that. Yes, that was so good.
they were overjoyed every time they looked like they were about to take something out of the deal.
It's like David
Which is
Tomlinson
totally
keeps getting
opposite
run over.
in the Jungle Book with them vultures, where they were like on the branch saying, "Oh, hey, what do you want to do? I don't know.
I don't know what you want to do. Hey, now don't start that again.
Right?
I don't know. I mean, shoot, on the I guess now defunct ride Splash Mountain, the freaking vultures were used to scare the crap out of you when they were going up the incline.
I remember
because I mean their line is like y'all better turn back now. If only you could. I remember that because I first read that there was a kid on that thing, and that kid was freaking out, and that taunting by the vultures did not help his freak out at all.
I think I went on that on my one trip to Disney World. Yeah.
Oh, you no longer can because they've gotten rid of that.
Yep,
Unfortunately,
it's Tiana's Adventure, which I guess is basically the same ride, just reshaped with more modern touches. But I have only been to Disney one time in my life, and that's Disneyland. I'm too expensive to go there nowadays.
well, while Professor
It's always
Brown,
been expensive.
Shoot, it's like 5 times now what it was.
Yeah.
while Professor Brown was completely run over several times, he tried to grab the Star of Astaroth from his neck to no avail. And even the kids were yelling at him, "Hey, ref, didn't you see that?" He wasn't exactly refereeing the best.
Well, I don't know if you mentioned this, but basically he ended up volunteering to referee the match. And we hear the comment that for some reason they have trouble finding referees. And you watch the match, and it's like, I wonder why they have trouble. I can't fathom it.
Admittedly, I thought they were going to try and pull something like the king wanting him to cheat for him, but it really did seem like the king's main interest was he just wanted to play the game. And
he was doing, he and his team were doing plenty of cheating on their own, so you know.
Yeah. They weren't. Neither side was really paying much attention to the rules. They were just like doing their own thing.
Well, at one point, one of the kids I think asked about it. I think someone said, he pretty much makes up the rules as he goes.
Well, he loves it so much.
Well, Tammy, bring us home. what happens next?
So they do end up getting the star, I believe, right? Yeah.
Well, they do. In fact, after the match is done, the professor ends up getting his coat put back on him, and he offers to put the robe of the king back on, which he asks to the king, "Have you ever heard of the Egyptian switch?" "Well, I'll have to tell you about it sometime later." And the king is left with thinking that they're good people. He wouldn't want them living there, but but they go on their merry way. But then his stooge notices that his necklace is gone, and he's like, "No, it's
not gone per se.
Well, why didn't you say so?"
The Brown had skillfully used the gypsy switch to give the king his ref's whistle.
So they are on the bed, and suddenly they hear the king coming their way. Paul, I think that's the name of this small child, right? Well, in any case, he is having trouble getting the knob out of his pocket, and Price, she is trying to remember the words of how to turn the king into a rabbit. Finally, at the last moment, she does, and the rabbit turns tail and hops away. And they end up using the traveling spell to get back to their, I guess, Miss Price's home. And I think, her name is Eglantine Price. I just remembered that was her name because that was the name of the song that he sung in the home with the bomb in the middle of the courtyard. So, but what happens from here, Tammy?
Well, I believe it's the Nazis come and take over her house.
And the professor, he decides to up and leave.
Right.
Before that.
Right. He up and leaves, and he's at the train station, and Nazis come take over, and her and the kids are totally annoying the commander or whatever. So he has them taken back into town and taken to that castle, because
I guess we forgot to mention when the kids were waiting for the home that they were going to, they were fighting on top of like one of the museum pieces in this castle, which is kind of an interesting little scene.
But I should also probably mention that this spell that they've been looking for, because that's a pretty key plot point, before the Nazis show up, they're really sad that the metal did not transfer back to their home. And of course, she's like, "Oh, if only I could have remembered the words. If only I'd thought to write them down." And the little kid's like, "I know them." And no one listens to him. And then eventually they find out it was in the book. And he's like, "Yeah, I said it was." But yeah, no one paid attention. But they go ahead.
Lacuna poetic macordum status G. Yes, those are the words. How do you know them? They're in this book, see?
Yeah. So they do end up actually practicing the spell, and ultimately succeeding, of course, with the power of song.
Well, I would say with the power of rhythm, because that's what
Yeah,
that's what Professor Brown suggested, because it wasn't working with just saying it, you know.
yeah. So,
But the first time using it, she did it on a pair of men's shoes, and then all of a sudden, a pair of her underwear and a whole horde of other clothing came out and decided to dance and attack them. And of course, we get in there her underwear attacking the priest scene. And she goes out and is like, "Do you mind?" And of course,
which scares him to, he hightails it out of there.
Yeah,
he doesn't even put his kickstand up on his bicycle.
and also, for some reason, when he shows up, also his hat falls within the purview of the spell and decides to leave him. But then when he's ready to go, it comes back to him. So,
which just scares him even more, I think.
Yeah, exactly. See, he's not Indiana Jones. He's not used to his hat somehow always coming back to him. That's, he doesn't have that power, that mastery over haberdashery that Indy does.
So
there's kind of a weird subplot where that priest wants to buy her house or something, right? Because
he's a gold digger. He's a priest who is a gold digger.
Yeah.
Well, then when the Nazis come in, they just take over, and don't pay any mind to whatever Miss Price says. They just set up command posts right then and there.
As they do.
Oh, real quick before we leave the priest again, there was one fun scene earlier on where he and I think it was the woman in town who handles the mail for Miss Price. They were kind of waxing poetic over his predecessor's distinguished service in war. And then she turns to him and is like, well, you could do the same. And then he starts coughing like, if only
Oh, because of her bike
so genuine.
Emanating that sulfur.
No, because she implied that he should go to war and minister to the flock on the battlefield the way his predecessor did, and so he just starts. I wish I could. It's suspicious that he doesn't do much coughing elsewhere in the film.
Yeah, we learned that the priest doesn't have much of a backbone very early
on.
Yeah. Possessed clothes flying around, and he was like, "Oh."
He's such a man of principle.
Of course, the big thing is when the Nazis take over, they take over her house and kind of have her and the children held hostage, but they end up being evicted to a different cell. So our Mr. Tomlinson essentially gets himself works up the nerve to go rescue him by changing himself into a rabbit using the spell, and also showing that his confidence in the spells does make them last longer than our main character's ability with it. She has to actually change him back. He doesn't
make them work. Yeah,
it is an interesting because he said himself that he mixed the spells up a little bit to give them more flair. So she was probably casting watered down spells all along, and he was casting more actual ones. But the movie does lean hard into the idea that, which is an interesting idea. I kind of wish they'd explored a little more. But the idea that magic is heavily tied to one's faith in it. You know, if you say a spell and you don't mean it, it ain't going to do anything.
Well,
so Brown he's a charlatan. He's a con artist. He doesn't believe in magic. It's not really until he sees it done.
His own con said back to him.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, she thought that she was casting a spell all along for a toad, and it turns up the rabbit. She's been upset all along because she goes, I just can't get it to do the toad. Why is it always a rabbit?
Well, he helps her gain the confidence to cast a spell that was the war-winning spell, which is a reanimation spell, which the original casting, they managed to do it with song to give her the confidence, and they kind of go a little bit haywire. But the second time that they do it, they're actually in that kind of museum with all those old war pieces from like medieval war and so on. So she ends up having an army of basically knight suits and stuff like that she can then take to war against the Germans.
Even so, there must have been a lot of stuff crammed into that building.
Tammy said something about that while we were watching it. It's an expansion of belief that all that lined hill of army was in that small little museum that they were, or castle museum that they were in.
It is a fantasy film, so I can suspend my disbelief.
Right.
We are in a film where we had cartoon animals, after all.
Yeah. True.
Like I don't think of a castle as a small building either. So even though it's maybe a small castle, it's still a giant building. Like if some of those were, say, in storage, like it seems fine to me. You know?
True. Also, it does seem with more confidence she might have had more of an area effect for the spell. So if there were other nearby buildings where they were using as armories or whatever, then yeah, it makes sense.
I could see that. But Tammy, did you want to bring us home through the animated section of scaring of the wartime criminals?
Well, yeah, she manages to animate everything, and while that's going on, they actually see her up in the sky because she's saying things to them, and they're all, see, she's a witch. No, witches aren't real. She can't be a witch. Witches aren't real.
It's like she's flying there.
Right, and she's commanding all of this, and I get a kick out of they're trying to shoot these things, and it's like, I'm thinking while they're shooting them, you can't kill something that's already dead, people.
And as they're shooting, as they're shooting these armory, these full knights in shining armor and shit. Once they get enough bullets, either in their helmet or in their leg pieces, they shake them out, and the dudes are looking at and then like, I thought there was a man in there.
Oh yeah, all the little antics were just so funny, the guy that's trying to stab the one, and he lifts up his part of the body, and then he tries to go over his head, and his head pops up, so that every place the guy's trying to stab him with that arrow, it
was pretty funny where you had the one guy that kept firing away at the one suit of armor, and it started slowing down and staggering, and it looked like, wait a minute, they haven't been able to affect the armor yet. Why is this one working? Maybe he's doing something right. But then the armor just kind of pauses and leans over and takes its boot off. It shakes all the bullets out of its foot. And it's like, oh, he was starting to have trouble walking on all those bullets. I get it now. It was kind of funny to see that. And then, of course, the soldier's reaction was like, the hell?
I thought one of the most interesting pieces in the whole thing was when they exploded this one that was on a horse, and then it like pieced itself back together, except for the helmet was like off to the side, but it still like looked like effective, like it exploded and it came back together as like one whole piece again.
Yeah. His
And it
instead of his
charged
head,
up.
his leg was up there where his head was supposed to be, and then he took off after him anyways. The whole thing with all, that was such a great piece right there. I mean, the whole that they're driving him away and everything, but you had a lot of humor in that area too. It just, which I think made for that whole thing, is you had the humor plus this is serious, but
Well, they had to kid it down for. I mean, they weren't going to show like it realistically for the kids, but yeah, it's more important to have them just defeated and then run away.
yeah.
I mean, I thought there was a pretty cool, like, horrific thing you could have done with what's essentially amounted to haunted armor, because like they were trying to dismember them, and like I was just picturing it's like, oh, each of these moments it could be so crazy with like they're coming after them with axes and stuff, and it's like I don't know. I was seeing something very different in my head, and it was like, it's kind of a shame they had to Disney-ify this. I mean, yes, it's a Disney movie, but you get what I'm trying to say, I think.
I could see them.
Because there was some kind of like, even like the close calls where it's like they're swinging the axes at like the guns and just like beating those guys up. Like even that was kind of like, whoa. Like for a minute there, I thought the commander was gonna get nailed by the executioner suit in that giant axe, and then he was just like, and he just runs away. But at that point, like the town militia has finally showed up.
Yeah, they definitely did Disney it down a bit because nobody got hurt,
Well, see, that's another thing. I actually laughed really loud at this part. Like, the old British troops like get there, and they're like, there they are, ready, fire, and then like very off camera, like you hear the sound of like gunfire, and the kids and like the witch are like, oh, what's that? And then it cuts back to just like the boats aren't moving anymore, and the guy is like, well, lads, we've showed them, they won't come back. It's like,
right,
shoot them all off camera.
I do like how you get this one character with a long sword, and he's just swinging this long sword at the dudes, and he's missing a few of them, but it's a huge reach, and you get to see the length of this fucking thing, I liked that moment in this whole fight. I don't know if you guys saw that one.
Yeah, but they still don't hurt or kill anybody, even in that scene. It's
Yeah, I did get a kick out of how all the old dudes showed up and took credit for it all. He basically missed everything. Yeah. They were like Brandon in your game. The cops tend to behave.
Well, they got there just in time after the whole battle was done. But if you think about it, that's how every action movie is. The tough guy beats back the bad guys, and after they're all done, that's when the cops show up.
Yeah.
Bring us into production next.
But yeah, I mean, it was a nice. I think it was a nice effect at the end of this. I think that it was kind of interesting to see the con man going ahead and enlisting in the military, never to return alive, but with the love of his lady love.
Indeed.
Who has given up her witchy ways because she only really wanted to be a witch to serve her country.
I'm kind of surprised they took him because he's pretty old. Like,
right. Well, compared to them, he was a spring chicken.
I guess they're supposed to be passed off as younger than they really are. I mean, Angela Lansbury was pushing 50 when this movie was going on. I can't remember how old David Tomlinson was, but he probably wasn't much younger by the look of him.
Roddy McDowell looked pretty young, though.
Yeah, he did, but nobody else did. It was another moment they really laughed at was when he was introducing Angela Lansbury. It's like, this young woman here is, she's visibly like 55. What do you mean, young woman?
Well, David Tomlinson was born 1917.
He was almost 60.
So Tomlinson was actually 8 years older than Lansbury.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, he did look older, but not by much.
She was, I think, 45 when the film was made. If I'm mathing correctly, she was about 45, so he would have been about 53. Yeah. But again, compared to the guys he was marching with, and if he was just joining the town guard, it made it sound like he was going into the main military, which, they wouldn't have taken him. But if he was just joining the town guard, he was definitely younger than most of them.
I mean, they were having him go to like the train station and stuff.
Yeah,
and he was going to the front, which I'm like, how young do you think he is?
Yeah, that was a little much.
Straight to the front line. Yeah.
Right.
Well, that was the end of him. Moving on.
Well, I guess that brings us basically to the end here. Unless anybody's got anything else we want to add.
I'm good.
So I guess we should go into production. So my thoughts on production is I think for its time, I thought it did very good. I mean, nowadays we're so used to being able to animate objects and stuff very easily. But all, that fight scene that we were just talking about with everything being animated, that took a lot, I'm sure, for them to do. They didn't have the things we have now and the technology we have now. So I give them a lot of credit for being able to get all that stuff moving and get it and especially like that scene where David said where it blew up and it came back together, and then of course having the animation in there, and I think even the costumes were good for the time. I think the scenery was good. So I think overall they did a really good job of production.
Yeah, I would say the costuming, the set design, that kind of stuff was pretty solid. The hair and makeup was hilarious, and I love it. The animation, the mostly animated sequence mostly worked, but it looked a little janky. The parts where they just tried to animate magical effects did not age well. But again, for the time, it was good for the time. And I'm sure if you saw it at the time, it would have been impressive. But I would say some of it didn't age well. As far as the stuff with the suits of armor and stuff at the end, there was, I thought most of that was really well done. But at the end, when they all lost their animation because she got hit on the head or whatever it was, and they all just kind of slowly dropped to the ground. I'm like, well, if they did it nowadays, they would have dropped in a heartbeat, and it would have looked better. But apparently, a lot of that stuff was actual antiques. So now I understand why they dropped it slowly to the ground, because they didn't want to break all of it. So, but yeah, I would say for the time it was solid. Yeah.
Well, I think excellent production value for the time. I mean, a lot of the technology that they had there, it was viable what they did. I mean, they already had they've been using animation paired with human actors for a long time. I think since the 30s they've had stuff like that. But still, having it paired like this and having it work out the way it did, I think it was really amazing what they did with the production design. I don't know if they got value for their money, but it was quite amazing. The set pieces, especially the animated ones, were really impressive. But even the ghostly army, again, very cool to see. Very impressive effects for the 1970s, to be sure.
Who's next?
And actually, we probably should mention that the movie did win an Oscar for visual effects.
Well deserved.
Yeah, it won. It was apparently the last Disney branded film to win an Oscar until The Little Mermaid. But it was nominated for 5 awards and won effects. So that's pretty cool.
And I do think people look at it, and if they really look at it, you're like, compares like, that's nothing. The movies that came out this year are much more impressive, of course.
Well, yeah.
Came out this year. So, you got to compare it to movies of the time.
A good example, that little short film that Disney put out, Once Upon a Studio, was definitely an example of animation and live action being blended together, and it worked beautifully. I thought it was an extraordinarily well animated film, but that's 50 years later. Things change in years.
It is too bad that they didn't build upon that concept to do a movie for the 100th anniversary. Wish was okay. It wasn't a bad movie by any means, but for the 100th anniversary, when you're expecting something spectacular, especially with that short there, it was kind of sad that they didn't have. I mean, I still don't know why they didn't have more Disney cameos in that movie instead of like fake cameos. It's not like they were going to sue themselves. Like, how dare you? We're going to sue you for putting Mickey Mouse in this Disney movie.
Exactly.
It's the kind of company that might do that to themselves, though.
Disney is just sinister enough; they might sue themselves.
And I don't know, like maybe like an AI or something that handles that would be like, hey. Well, sometimes, like on YouTube, the companies do copyright claim their own channels because it's so heavily automated.
Well, there can be things that they could get sued for. And I know in Once Upon a Studio, they apparently did clear with Robin Williams' family before using unused. He had some unused recordings of Genie that they used for the movie, but they got permission first because they really screwed him over with the original Aladdin, and it took him years to forgive them. So they could have gone a different route and opened themselves up to liability. They did not. So good on them, I guess.
Yeah. Shoot, they could have done the Genie voice from the second film, Return of Jafar.
Indeed.
Okay. So who's next on production? Did you want to go, Dustin?
Oh, I think, well, the end sequence is my favorite part. was my favorite sequence with the. I keep calling it haunted armor. Technically, it's not haunted armor, but you get the idea. And as an effect, like I was not sure how they really did that. Like I would assume they just like painted the guys out of the frame or something, like film cell to film cell. But I was really impressed. Like those effects were great. Some of the other stuff, like the bed, like magically blinking around, that didn't quite work so hot. But other things, like especially that finale, like wow. So the effects are really impressive in this, except for a couple, like I said, of the more standard, like lights and fade in, and now the bed is magically back in its place. So this was great.
Okay. What about you, Kroll? Are you alive and well? What did you think about production? Okay. I know, Brandon, you went, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Then I myself, I thought that the production was awesome for its time. I mean, there were things that in the end sequence that I could not figure out how they did it. I mean, they must have had to used a lot of people in like black suits, like underneath that armor to make some of it happen. But I'm wondering what kind of technology they did use at that point in time, since it seems like it was almost like somewhat what they do nowadays, except it looked plausible. Definitely did not dislike any of the special effects in here. So very enjoyable, very nostalgic. Since I told many of you it was definitely a rotational Disney film from my childhood. So I'm glad I was able to get to see it again, and I will continue to rewatch it from here on forward, even into my old age. So,
I mean, I saw this, I think, exactly once when I was like a really little kid. Like it was one of, I wasn't sure if I had seen it before up until about where we got to the island part with the animals like live action thing, and I was like, oh wait, like I half remembered part of that scene, and honestly, I thought I had dreamt the movie up. Like I thought I had imagined it, because I had no clue at all. I mean, you couldn't look things up very well back then, so this was kind of a fun, like, mystery solved experience for me.
okay. And definitely there was a soundtrack to this movie, because there were songs that were there.
Right.
Of course, the overture in the Old Home Guard, A Step in the Right Direction, The Age of Not Believing. Those two, A Step in the Right Direction, The Age Not Believing, were performed by Angela Lansbury, With a Flare and Eglantine were performed by David Tomlinson and Angela Lansbury for the second one. Portobello Road was a whole bunch of people. Portobello Street Dance definitely had music for it, but The Beautiful Briny is what that song is called. Substitutionary Locomotion, of course, was most of all Angela Lansbury, David Tomlinson, and the kids. I'm just gonna, of course, then there's Nobody's Problems, performed by Angela Lansbury. Then of course, there's the reprise of the Old Home Guard. And then Blow the Man Down, it was the song that that Baloo character was singing. It's an old sea shanty.
Okay.
If you know anything about it, but
I think most people are aware that "Blow the Man Down" is. I mean, when pirates sing a sea shanty, like in cartoons, they sing that one. I think people know it's a shanty.
Plus, it was the title of a really cool movie that flew under the radar a couple of years back, and I was disappointed that it flew under the radar. We should note that the music is by Richard M. Sherman and Robert B. Sherman, the duo that did Mary Poppins. And
Okay.
apparently this was the second or third straight movie where Disney screwed them. And they got pissed. And basically this was the last time they worked with Disney for many, many years. We talked before about some of the songs that were not in the original theatrical release. Some of them were prepped, recorded, ready to go, and cut at the last minute. Some of them were cut earlier in the production cycle. But from what I read, it looks like there's between 4 and 5 and 6 songs that they wrote for the movie that ultimately weren't in the theatrical cut. And they were pissed. And they, we were just kind of half joking about.
That you were talking about?
What's that?
Who was it that you were talking about?
Twins. The ones who wrote the songs.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, Disney apparently did them dirty on this one. And I think Brandon mentioned that Beautiful Briny was actually originally written for Mary Poppins. But yeah, there were several written for this one that Disney did not use. And yeah.
Well, Erwin Coastal is the conductor, the music arranger, or the
Right.
supposed composer that they actually put with the film. And I'm just trying to look up him. He did work with West Side Story and Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music.
Yeah, that's the thing, is there was a lot of crossover, and though they didn't come out nearly at the same time, they came out almost over a decade later. There was a lot of overflow with these two, and it's interesting because there are songs that were meant for Mary Poppins. There was actually a song that was kind of cut out through the whole thing, where they were going to have the kids do one refrain of it, and then have Angela Lansbury do a similar refrain after of the song, but the song meant differently. Like the kids talking about, basically the song is about them putting up a brave face, saying it's like, well, we never wanted it anyway. And for her, it was supposed to be a song about her missing the kids and saying, well, I never really wanted to have them there anyway. It's and there was another one that she was supposed to be singing before she took flight on her broom, where the scene got cut, but in the original restoration, they did play the song in the right place in the movie to still pictures of her from that scene, which they decided not to keep in the full restored version for obvious reasons. But they did keep it on the soundtrack, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, this movie needed to be longer.
Oh, yeah, obviously.
I mean, there's another 4 minutes to that Portobello Road song.
Yeah. And speaking of,
there are many films that are out there that have ultimately more minutes that were stripped from.
Oh yeah, no doubt. There are many of them, but apparently one of what I was reading, this was, like I said, the Sherman brothers were upset with Disney's treatment, but this was, again, not apparently they wrote songs for the Tigger movie. That was the next Disney one they did, and that came out 29 years later. But I'm trying to see what the movies were. The same thing. What happened here? Apparently, Music Hall said that the movie premiere had to run less than 2 hours. So Disney did a last-minute cut so that it could premiere at the Radio City Music Hall. And apparently they did the same thing to The Happiest Millionaire and the one and only Genuine Original Family Band, both of which had songs by the Sherman Brothers. And when it happened 3 times in a row, they said, no, we can't do this. That's... And you would think that by the 3rd time, Disney would plan better, maybe? Yeah. But, what have you. I do have to mention that I like the Portobello Road song up until that dance interlude. I have never been a fan of 4 and 5 and 6 minute long dance interludes in movies. I check out. If we have a long dance interlude, I check out of the film. And that I completely lost my interest for that segment. And I don't know why they needed to restore it to the film because it did not add anything.
Well, then that checks.
They probably just used whatever footage they had that was like clean and good to go.
What's that?
They probably just used whatever material they had that was
probably
completed.
I mean, they went to big lengths to restore some of those, like the Portobello Road ones.
Yeah.
They were grabbing cuts and prints that were in horrible shape, and they did painstaking work to remove cracks and filters and restore color to it.
I don't like effort. It's just,
It's just weird that, I actually do think that the film would have been better at the Radio City Music Hall length. I think that there were some parts of it, like that song, that it dragged a little bit. But still, it's kind of good to see the original artist's idea. I do wish that they had included that original cut on the Blu-ray release that I have.
So that you could see what it was like without all the added bonuses.
Because my last viewing of this was probably in the 90s, and the last viewing before that was in the 80s. So, neither one of those views would have been the full length.
Well, I think at this point, Tammy, bring us into the favorite scenes and our favorite characters.
Okay, Dustin, you want to start out? Favorite scene, favorite character?
Well, for me, most of the characters are kind of interchangeable. Like I can't remember a whole lot of specific things the kids even do. And Angela Lansbury is just kind of old. But if we're, I guess, quote unquote, the professor would be my most memorable character because it feels like he has almost the most to do. And what I mean by that is, yes, the movie is about
doing somersaults in that house and whatnot. He had his feet up on the back of the chair. For a relatively older man, he was very limber.
Yeah, that was kind of wild. I had forgotten about that. But anyway, for favorite scene, definitely the finale with the haunted armor because that was really cool. And if it hadn't been it's a fun Disney movie, we're having a romp, that could have been pretty scary. Like, it felt like some Army of Darkness stuff. Like you could have done some pretty cool things with that. So I really enjoyed that, and I kind of want to see some stuff with ghosts now. Like I've been put in the mood for it.
I was while I was watching this, I was kind of thinking like, what if they remade it? I do this a lot with older films. And like I said, the preacher really reminded me of Jim Carrey in a lot of ways, but he's probably too old for the role now. But I dismissed it. I'm like, we don't need a remake of this. But now that you say that, I'm like, I wonder what Sam Raimi would do. That would be interesting.
Sam Raimi kind of did. Like,
Oh.
having seen this so many years after having seen Army of Darkness, I have to feel like
Yeah.
he took a couple ideas from that.
He probably was influenced, yeah.
Like, maybe not in a noticeable way, but it had to be kind of on his mind for, like, I mean, I'm sure it was a conscious decision. It's like, okay, so, you know, haunted army, let's make sure there's skeletons, you know, like that's like the horror version of this, is that there's skeletons in the armor, you know? Or, well, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's kind of sparking off like a bunch of ideas at once, and I'm not really sure where to start. You know what I mean?
Jason and the Argonauts with the skeleton army.
I mean, it was cool. It was cool. I liked it. This was a fun trip, and I'm happy I got to revisit it. Even though I had not remembered, I did not remember the name at all. It was kind of nice to solve, you know, one of those childhood mysteries. Because there are a handful of things where it's like, what the hell was that? That I still am just not sure about. I think the most recent one of those I solved, besides this, was all the way back in 2014 with Canadian X-Files, the Psi Factor. There was an episode about a mutant alligator monster. It was like alligator bear thing in the sewer. It took so many years to figure out what the hell was that. And now we've solved one of those mysteries. So thanks for letting me come on and talk about it. So
Cool. Alrighty.
How about you, Kroll? Do you have a favorite scene, favorite character?
I mean, I love Angela Lansbury's, you know, character. You know, I definitely remember that, and just the scenes with when they're on the bed and she's turning the bedknobs and stuff, and them flying through different places. You know, pretty much. That's my biggest memory of the whole movie from being and watching it as a child. So, I'd have to say those because that stuck out the most.
Okay, yeah, those are pretty neat. I mean, because you know, who thinks of traveling on a bed?
Yeah, in the way they travel, it's
Right.
really always, you know. I mean, like I said, I didn't rewatch it now, and so I haven't seen it since I was a kid. You know, I think I saw it more than once as a kid. I'm pretty sure we had it on video VHS or something, but you know, still, it's been a long time since I saw it, but I still remember like that sticks out to me, you know, them traveling on the bed and turning the bed knobs, and, you know.
Well, of course, yeah. As a kid, that would seem so magical, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, even as an adult, it is
Other
magical.
favorite, oh, it's pretty freaking cool.
Yes. Okay. Jake, favorite scene, favorite character?
I don't have a strong favorite. I know apparently Angela Lansbury complained about the quote by the numbers roles in the film, and it's true that most of her and the kids and Brown are kind of by the numbers. She and Brown are saved partly because they are talented actors, and the kids were saved partly by the great accents. But if I had to pick favorite characters, I gotta say the vultures. With the cat is my close second. Those would be the favorites. I also like the priest mainly because he really doesn't. He feels like he's from a different movie, and he kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. But he's amusing amusingly smarmy for a Disney film, and I was so. I'd have to say he'd be probably a third, but I gotta pick the Vultures as my favorite, just because that whole concept cracked me up. As far as favorite scenes, the scene where they're watching Emilius Brown like a hawk, trying to see it, or like vultures, I should say, waiting for the part where they can run out and put him on the stretcher. That was very, very amusing. And yes, I do think the whole scene with the armor at the end was pretty cool and very well done. And so I would say that would be the other one that you mentioned.
Okay. How about you, Brandon?
Well, I mean, my favorite scene is the sea one. I don't know why, but that one, though it doesn't feel entirely like it belongs in the movie, it's still quite fun. And it really is just an entertaining scene and a very catchy song. Most of the songs in this are very catchy. But let's see, Emilius, David Tomlinson's character, that is by far my favorite character in this. I don't know. I like the smarmy kind of a trickster with a heart of gold. It's just there.
With a flair. And on that note, I guess I'll go into my favorite scene and or favorite characters. I kind of like both Miss Price and Mr. Emilius Brown, because both of them are like almost opposites a little bit, because he's a con man, and she's a student of the arts, and I do like the fact that she's not quite a full-fledged witch, that she's as you go learning a person in it, and that she's very patriotic. As far as scenes, I do enjoy the dancing, the extended dancing. I love the different styles in our pieces. Maybe it's because I've watched a ton of Gene Kelly movies and enjoyed his dancing, and have gotten into certain dances that Fred Astaire has done during some of his movies. I think that kind of early on kind of helped me towards liking dancing to a certain extent. Ballet, on the other hand, that bores me. If you stick a ballet segment in between, that'll turn me on. Tammy can probably tell you about my thoughts on the Dracula ballet that she took me to twice.
A Dracula ballet.
Yeah. Wasn't there a Dracula ballet that she took me to?
Yes.
A couple of times, Tammy.
What was
Well,
it?
I
Blood?
got you to go to it, and I had already seen it once, but I got you to go to it because I hadn't seen it in a few years. It's like, I want to go yet.
But
So,
yeah, it bored the crap out of me, but she loved it. So.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Otherwise,
I do enjoy the end art. The whole haunted army concept. There really isn't that much way that you can describe it, except for maybe reanimated. But even then, that is kind of not the, because
they're not exactly undead creatures, so it's more like reanimated armor.
Yeah, it's very
Technically, there's not. Technically, it's the armor that's alive. They're not really ghosts or anything. It's just. Well, okay. So I've been messing with my magic stuff a lot lately, and there's a card called In Soul Artifact, which is just like a flying pair of scissors that are suddenly alive. It's like that. But
Yeah.
they look haunted, so that's why I kept using that term.
Well, I guess maybe I misspoke when the guys were shooting and saying that, but I mean, but technically they're shooting at something they couldn't kill because it was not alive. So that's what I thought was amusing, because you're shooting at something that you can't kill.
You're right.
They have the best reaction faces too. With the mounted machine gun, they're like, wait, what? Just the sadness on their face. Oh, it's so good. I can't even put it into words. It's just so good.
And to be honest, there were a lot of FU moments that American filmmakers would actually do against the war effort, or make the Germans look like they were these tiny, puny little things that could just run away at a moment's notice.
Run away!
Which, to be honest, probably did help uplift the American spirit, the American spirit of things at the time. So,
ironically,
nowadays,
I remember in my history class, the teacher was talking about how some World War II propaganda was presented specifically to the German people. They always showed American infantry and soldiers as just bumbling and stupid, and they said it actually had a demoralizing effect on the German army when they actually engaged the American troops and were like, oh, they're just as good as us. You said they would be dumb and this would be easy. So it actually caused problems going too far with stupid enemy soldiers depictions, which I always found kind of funny.
Yeah.
Okay, is that it for you then, David?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. But I enjoy the film, so your turn.
For me, my favorite character, of course, was Miss Bryce, Angela Lansbury, but Cosmic is close second. I like the kitty, but
yeah,
I liked her character. I mean, she's, I don't know, what can you say? I've enjoyed her in many things, but my favorite scene is the ending one, because it's just so awesome. I mean, you hear the of the marching, it's, you got,
and the low song, the Lacuna, Lacoide, Macordum, Sadisty,
right. You got a little bit of everything in that scene, because it is a serious scene because it's about war, but yeah, you got the comedy, and it's great because it's got everything right in that scene, Oh. Okay.
Alrighty. Well, I think that brings us to the end here. So why don't we go around and tell everyone who we are and what's going on with ourselves. So, Dustin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I have a YouTube channel called The Cryptic Horrors, where I used to show off all this cool horror stuff that I would find everywhere around the Milwaukee area. And a lot of those places have closed, and money for collecting stuff has completely disappeared. So the channel has been on hiatus for a while. Every week I try to get myself to start making content for it again, because I do have a lot of stuff to show off over the last year I've been out. And every week it just doesn't get to happen because I have too much to do. So I, want to say, go subscribe to the Crypto Horrors. So hopefully I can get myself to justify the time again. I do have a few unboxings I can do. I've been sitting on those for a while, and I just need some incentive to clear space and shoot them. So I really miss doing that, and yeah, we're going to try to get back to it. So I have an Instagram for the Horror Collection as well that I'm going to try to start posting more to. Same title, The Cryptophores. And my Twitter, Cryptaxis. Eventually, I want to change it to just Cryptaxis across all my channels so that I'm easier to find. I'm there quite a lot. So go follow me there. And yeah, we're gonna keep trying to make content because we really miss it. So I even have this crazy idea for a book about reptiles and monster movies, and I need to learn how Kickstarter's rules work because it'll probably cost me, it'll probably take a year, and like $30,000 is about my expenses for a year. So it's probably how much it'll cost to write. So I'm gonna try to look into that as a thing. So. Yeah, wish me luck.
Alrighty. Crow, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm Ron Thurber, aka Crow. I am a digital marketer. I help normal, everyday people get rid of their soul-sucking jobs and enjoy life again, and become financially and time-free. So working 2 hours a day. I'm on YouTube at Stroke Warrior Marketing, and I am on TikTok and make money W Ron, and yeah, I'm also on Facebook.
Okay. Very cool. Heading over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I am Kodabuki Jake. I spend a lot of time working, but I do, do try and get a lot of other stuff done. I know Septum and I filmed a couple episodes today to nearly finish off a project, and we had Dave join us for one of those. Nice project that's upcoming that I'm sure he'll have more to say on. We occasionally put stuff up on SeptumSin versus the World, once in a while. But I also, I'm watching a lot of stuff to get ready for this year's Versus Awards. I still have a lot of movies left on the list, but I've knocked out a few in the last week. Hope to continue moving that ball forward. But also being May, I'm spending a lot of time outside doing a lot of yard work and traveling, and just keeps me very, very busy. So, but I still try to watch at least a movie a week to join these fine folks and talk about the movie of the week. And we're in an interesting month this month, and I look forward to seeing what else we have to look for in Strange May.
Alrighty. Heading over to Tammy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I go on this. I'm David's fiance, and I go on this channel, another one, and talk about movies and listen to everybody else's opinions and check out new films I haven't seen. And I have my own collection. And now that it's summer, my 1972 Grand Prix and I are out having fun.
Alrighty. How about you, Brandon? How about a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, SeptumSin is SeptumSin versus the World. We do our best to talk about physical media. Right now, the channel has mostly been about what anime is coming out each week. But I do occasional spotlights on the show, various topics, usually on Thursdays. I expect to do a new Anhedenia project this week. I just got to film it. Maybe tomorrow or Wednesday I'll do that. And I do have a spotlight episode this Thursday where I talk about the perils of upgrading and thinning in a collection. Of course, the thing that Jake was talking about was tabletop horror, which we've technically finished filming the last episode of season 1. We technically have a bonus episode that we're going to film, and I've got to edit those 2 last episodes. And then it's just a matter of getting stuff created so that I can put them up on sale and then put the regular episodes up on the channel. So I'm going to have 1 episode that'll be special that you have to actually purchase, but the rest will be free on YouTube as we go. And it's going to be a pretty cool series. Next week, I am actually, and Schlockaholics should be making a comeback this Saturday where we're going to cover some of the movies the Schlockaholics have been in. And this Saturday, we're trying to cover Amityville Webcam, which is the first movie I have ever made. Well, second, but first movie that was actually fully out there that I've made.
Feature length.
I actually made 1 previous feature-length movie, the Anhedenia Project documentary.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's my second feature-length movie, but this one involves people other than myself. And I'm looking forward to that. I am going to be working on a physical release for the Anhedenia Project that Evan Jacobs is going to put out. But that will take some time, and I'm helping Dave with his project. But finally next week for Strange May, we're going to end it out with the one I was originally going to start on, but I was unable to make it to the first one for reasons that are personal. But I was inspired for this topic because I wanted to show off a movie about Dave and the maze that he made. So we're going to be talking about Dave Made a Maze next week.
Well, I did sing Amazed to Tammy when I first met her. But that will be a story for a different time. So my name is David Streggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulous journey that we've been having. It was a pleasure to come on and talk about this movie with y'all. And hopefully you enjoyed it as well. Hopefully the audience out there has enjoyed our discussion, and let us know down in the comments whether you've seen the movie. And if you haven't, well, update yourself with the film and let us know down in the comments what you thought either way. That being said, I am within the next couple of weeks probably going to continue working on my film with Brandon now that we can. So like, share, and subscribe, and hopefully every single one of you has a nice evening, morning, or afternoon, wherever you are. Thanks for listening, and everyone say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good day. I say good day.